Hey guys, Silver Speed here, and today I'm going over the beginning of The Flash. And not just his origin, his character creation too. So get ready for some flashy content. The beginning of The Flash starts in November 1939, but not as you originally know him today. He was originally known as Jay Garrick. Now, you may know Jay Garrick as something of a mentor to Barry, but he was actually also the first Flash. His costume was made up of his signature steel helmet with wings on the sides, a red shirt with a lightning bolt, blue pants, and red boots. Jay Garrick's Flash was made by Gardner Fox and artist Harry Lampert. Jay Garrick starts as an unathletic nerd who gets rejected by a girl named Joan. He gets his powers early in the comic when he's smoking a cigarette in a lab and accidentally knocks over some liquids and inhales heavy water vapors. He goes into a brief coma and wakes up feeling different. After a couple days at the hospital, the doctors tell him he's the fastest man alive. Yeah, it's pretty boring. In all this commotion, he drives his attention back to Joan, the girl who rejects him at the beginning. He spots her through the window, and randomly, while trying to run up to her, he accidentally uses his super speed for the first time to catch up to her. After he figures out what he can do, he decides to have some fun with his new powers and basically completely reforms himself by playing football and graduating. The first time he uses his powers to help someone is when a passing car starts shooting at Joan. Jake catches the bullet, but the gangster who fires the bullet thinks he killed Joan. Later, he finds out Joan is alive, and it's a whole thing that I don't want to use your time with. But at the end of the story, Jay is considered a hero and is known as the Flash. Jay had some pretty interesting villains, but one of the more important ones was known as the Thorn. The Thorn was like an alter ego sort of thing. Her backstory starts when she's a normal girl who gets pricked by a thorn and just magically gains an evil sister out of it. Thorn's powers are she shoots thorns and she can spin super fast like a tornado. Thorn was used in so many of Jay's comics, it was abnormal for her not to be in a comic. Jay's first comic was called The Flash Comics #1, but his second comic was actually part of a different series called the Justice Society of America, which is what mostly got him so popular. Popular enough to make a second solo comic. Now that we've gotten Jay's story out of the way, we can get to the really good part. Now get ready to clap. Barry Allen joins The Flash. And while we're talking about Barry, I'm going to get into the origins of his other known characters, but without further ado, let's get into Barry's origin. Barry starts in a science lab, and believe it or not, Jay Garrick actually has a lot to do with Barry's origin. Actually, right before he got his powers, he was reading a comic of Jay. So yeah, he was a pretty big fan. While reading the comic, Barry thought to himself what it would be like to be the fastest man on Earth. As he returns to a test he's making in a science lab, he gets struck by lightning through the window and spills chemicals on himself. It doesn't severely harm him, but does leave him a little scarred. While heading back to his house, he thinks he's going to miss his cab, and with one step of his foot, he gets pushed forward 10 feet. And he keeps running well past the taxi he was chasing. He shakes it off, though, telling himself the lightning was making him see things. He tries to get a good night's sleep so that hopefully he'll be normal in the morning. The next morning, Barry feels perfectly normal and tries making excuses about the event that had occurred the night before. After being late to his date with Iris, he sees a bullet going in slow motion toward Iris. He quickly pushes Iris out of the way and found out that the bullet was a stray shot by the Turtle Man. So by this point, he knows he has super speed, and while looking at a comic of Jay Garrick, he decides he needs to use his speed to help the world. The comic skips one of the best parts of any superhero, the costume making, and just forwards to him pressing his ring and his suit popping out of it. He also somehow uses his speed to defy gravity, which I didn't know the Flash could do. The first victim is the Turtle Man, who's known as the slowest man alive. He uses his speed to run on water and surround the Turtle Man so he can capture him, and that's the end of Barry Allen's first comic. I think we can all agree that The Flash has some awesome villains, including Reverse Flash, Zoom, Gorilla Grodd, Captain Cold, the Trickster. I could go on. I'm only going to go over the ones that really stand out, and the most iconic Flash villain is definitely the Reverse Flash. The Reverse Flash has a really cool origin. He was created in September 1963 and was first in The Flash #139, but he didn't get an origin comic until way later. Eobard Thawne's backstory starts in the 25th century, long after the Flash. He starts as an ungrateful child who was controlled by his parents. One day, his parents decided to have a second child because the first wasn't good enough, and so Eobard had a brother. Eobard's brother overshadowed everything he did, and he was treated like a disappointment. When he got older, Eobard was rejected to work at the Flash Museum, so he decided to learn about the Speed Force by himself. But for some reason, researching the Speed Force outside the Flash Museum is illegal, and his brother, who is a cop now, tries to arrest him. Before anything gets too far, the Reverse Flash shows up and kills Eobard's brother, erasing him from the timeline. Eobard now grows up as an only child. Now that he was an only child, Eobard had way more time to study the Speed Force. He wanted to learn more about the Speed Force than anyone else until someone named Professor Drake learned how to build a cosmic treadmill and prove the existence of the Speed Force. When Professor Drake refused to tell Eobard anything about the Speed Force, the Reverse Flash showed up and killed him too. This went on for some time. When Eobard has his first crush, Reverse Flash killed her fiance. When his parents worried about Eobard, Reverse Flash killed them. But one day, a capsule crashed in front of Eobard containing the Flash's uniform. He uses the suit to replicate the Speed Force explosion, giving himself speed. This may be surprising, but Eobard actually uses his super speed to become the Flash of his time. Although he started as a hero, when he found out he was destined to be the Flash's greatest villain, he lost his mind. He went to Barry's time and the Flash was forced to stop the Reverse Flash. While locked away, Eobard created his own source of speed, the negative speed force. The first thing he does now with this new speed force is go after Barry. When he's about to steal the lightning bolt that turns Barry into the Flash, he realizes that Barry needs to become the Flash for the Reverse Flash to exist. So he does the next best thing from killing Barry, hurting everyone he knows, starting with his mom. That's kind of what started the version of Barry we know today. Since Eobard hates the Flash, he does everything in his power to hurt him. Even when Barry starts to make friends, Eobard just erases them from existence. And that's how the Reverse Flash began. Now that we've gotten over a couple different factors that make up the Flash we know and love, it's time for the next one. And let's be honest, this video wouldn't be complete without Wally West. Wally West is known to be the fastest version of Flash, and he actually started out as Kid Flash, but not the one you know today with the yellow suit. He was literally just a miniature version of Wally, of Barry. Wally joined the Flash on December 1959 in the Flash number 110. He started when Iris asked Barry to look after her nephew, Wally. Yeah, I said nephew because that's how Wally started. Wally was a huge Flash fan and the president of the Flash fan club, and Iris thought that Barry knew the Flash personally. Little did she know Barry was the Flash. While talking about Flash, Wally asks if he can meet him, so Barry points in the direction of a room, and before Wally can open the door, Barry runs out into the room as Flash, faster than Wally can see. Wally is overjoyed to see the Flash, and after a while of talking, Flash asks Wally if he wants to see how he got his powers. While showing Wally where he got his powers, a lightning bolt shoots through the window and knocks chemicals over Wally. Very convenient. Wally seems to be fine, but just to be sure, Barry asks Wally to run, and Wally shoots forward at light speed. After telling Wally, all he can think about is being like the Flash. Barry makes a miniature costume for him, and Wally is off to save the day. But that's just the first story of Wally. He becomes so much more in newer comics. After Wally gets his speed, he decides to join the Flash as a sidekick and takes on the name Kid Flash. These two were a duo for more years than I can count. Eventually, though, Kid Flash left Barry and became a founding member of the Teen Titans. Wally was arguably the strongest character on the Titans and could easily defeat any villain he crossed. Everyone knows that Wally gets trapped in the Speed Force and for a decade, and I've searched and searched for the reason he got trapped, but I found nothing. So I'll just go the CW way. Wally gets tricked by Savitar into taking his place in the Speed Force for an entire decade. He doesn't come back until a battle between the Justice League and Darkseid, when Barry is able to pull Wally out of the Speed Force. After 10 years of Wally being in the Speed Force, he decides he's outgrown the name Kid Flash and he changes his name to just The Flash. He goes on to many adventures and even outruns the Speed Force itself. Now, for the last version of Flash today I'll talk about is Bart Allen. Bart Allen is the grandson of Barry Allen, and he's the product of two rivals, Don Allen and Melanie Thawne. Now, Bart Allen doesn't have as much going for him as the first three speedsters because he's the newest of them, so this one's going to be a little shorter. Bart Allen was born with a connection to the Speed Force, which caused problems. When he was 2, his body was the age of 12. Weird, I know. To keep his mind and body in sync, Bart was raised in a virtual reality, which made Bart very introverted and nervous. Bart's grandmother decided to take Bart back in time to race around the world with Wally West to keep his metabolism in pace, which helped us with his problems. The big problem was Wally didn't want to raise Bart because he was too much of a handful. So he gave Bart to Max Mercury. Years later, Bart was now known as Impulse, and he had met Superboy and Robin, and they all became friends. Together, they created the Young Justice. Long after this, the Young Justice split up following the deaths of Omen and Donna Troy. Also, somewhere between this, Impulse changes his name to Kid Flash and uses the Kid Flash's costume. Just go with it. After the Young Justice splits up, Superboy Prime, a DC villain, hurts the Titans, which makes Bart angry enough to team with Wally West and Jay Garrick to try and run the Superboy Prime into the Speed Force. Jay wasn't strong enough, though, and he gave up before he made it into the Speed Force. When Bart and Wally made it into the Speed Force, Wally was no help and disappeared. But somehow, Barry, Johnny Quick, and Max Mercury all show up and start helping Bart. They all made a prison for Superboy, but a year later he broke out. Bart then used Wally's ring and Barry's suit to bring the Speed Force into himself. Bart then makes it to the Battle of Metropolis and starts fighting along Superman. After figuring out his new powers, he takes on the name of the Flash. And with that, guys, that'll be the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. A lot of information was used from a book called The Flash, 80 Years of the Fastest Man Alive. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you're interested. See you